Today's daf we're going to be learning is Gittin daf Yudalid. Today's daf is sponsored by the Hadran Women of Long Island Group in loving memory of Yitzchak Halevi Stam, beloved father of their friend Esther Stam Katz. Jeez. May our learning be a zchut for the aliyah of his neshama, tehei nishmato tzura v'tzror achayim. Okay, we're going to get started now with where we left off yesterday. So it's a bit of a complicated daf. We're, like I said, deep into dinei mamonot, all sorts of laws of passing responsibilities, and really a sugya kind of out of Bava Metzia. But we're starting with our issue of Rav said that if I'm just trying to look for the words inside. If you say to me, listen, you owe me money, instead of giving it back to you, give it to somebody else. So if you say this when we're all three around, then it's konik. The third person has rights to it. Okay, it's as if we gave it to him. Now that we're her. Now the question becomes the following. Rav said this is not only in a pikadon, when you say return the item that I'm watching for you to this person, which is much easier to say because the item is in existence and it belongs to you. It just happens to be in my domain. But even when it comes to money, like you loan me money, and we're not talking about specific bills, but just the money in general that I owe still is now owned by this person, which is very strange. And the Gemara tries to figure out how this could possibly be. In the end, by the way, they're just going to give up and not really understand it. Okay, and you'll see what they do. The suggestion yesterday that we ended with was Amemar tried to explain, well, the reason why this works is because it's as if from the time I took out the loan, it's as if I said, I'm willing to commit to you that, right, this money, you can always kind of get this money from my property or anyone you decide to give it to. And it's as if the kinyan was done then. To which Rav Ashi says, well, what if someone wasn't alive at the time? What you're going to say, then it's not, if we happen to say, give this money to that person, you say, give it to that person, but they weren't alive at the time of the loan, it wouldn't work because it only goes back to the time of the loan. And that's what we call, right? It's someone who wasn't even in existence at the time of the loan. So therefore, it can't be that we're going to start making that distinction, in which case I reject your answer. And, sometimes people reject other people's answers and just say, I have issues with it and don't bring their own answer. But Rav Ashi actually brings his own answer. He says, I don't like your answer. I'll give you my answer. So we're starting from there, the last three words of Daf Yud Gimel Amud Bet. Ela Amar Rav Ashi, behahi hana'at v'kamishtanya le ben milva yishana lemilva chadasha gamar u'mishabed nafshe. Says, listen, there's a certain benefit I get in you passing the loan on to somebody else, because that's what you're in effect doing. When you say the money you owe me, instead of giving it to me, give it to someone else. It's actually in my best interest. Why? Because you now gave it to someone else. Now, you've been waiting for your money, let's say for 2 years. You're ready to get your money back. But if you pass it on to someone else, it's almost like I get a new loan. The way they say, you got a new loan on life. It's like I get a new loan. They're not pressed for the money right now because this is just a new thing that's going on. So they'll probably give me more time, and it's actually in my best interest. Because it's in my best interest, I'm willing, in this ma'amad of the three of us, to be makneh the money to them, to basically say, okay, well, because I'm benefiting from this, here. I didn't do an act of kinyan, but it's as if, because I'm benefiting, that actually gives this third party rights to the money. But Amarle Rav Huna Mar Bered Rav Nachman Nechemia Rav Ashi says, wait, that's got a problem as well. You complained last time when Amemar said this because of anyone who was born after the time of the loan. So you've resolved that issue because you've now made it at this moment, I'm passing it on to someone. So obviously if they weren't alive at the time of the loan, it doesn't make any bit of a difference. But Elameata, Kigon Hani Debe Bar Al Yashiv. But what about these people of the Bar Al Yashiv family? Now, what do we know about them? Dekafte v'shakle la'alter. Okay, we're going to have a lot of rough and gruff people in today's daf. Okay, it's actually, my car was stolen yesterday. Good end of story, but it's interesting that this daf is all about rough and tough people kind of taking things that don't belong to them or being overly aggressive. I'll maybe get back to the story soon about the car, but I did get the car back. Crazy story. But anyway, these people of Bar Yashuv, de kafte v'shakle la'alter, they tie people up. Okay, in other words, and they want their money immediately. This is why the story is relevant. I finally figured it out. I've been thinking, how am I going to get the story into today's daf? So, okay, I'll get to the story now because it's relevant. It's actually kind of sad. We went to this activity for Kanafayim Shel Krembo, which is a youth movement for kids with special needs, and it's all about values and togetherness, and everybody's equal and all that. And then you walk out and basically, husband and I came in separate cars, and he says, I can't find where I parked the car. And I said, I thought maybe, he was just kind of a little, his head was somewhere else. Are you sure? Okay, I call the company. He said, no, I think the car's stolen. So I call this, we have the company, it's called Hadran. They know where your car is. She said, no, your car's there. I said, I'm on the street. It's not here. She said, it's somewhere around. For security reasons, I can't tell you exactly where. It's not on the street you said, but it's on a street right near there. So we're wandering around, and it's really not there. Anyway, we called them back and we said, no, it's really not here. Anyway, they start trying to track down the car and figure out where it is. Obviously, their system wasn't working so great. And so in the meantime, they call us back and they say to us, and this is why it's relevant. They say to us, I'm sorry to ask you this question, but there was something a little strange about the way your car was stolen. I don't even know what they were talking about. But is it possible you owe anybody any money, and that they're, maybe trying to, they took your cards, or is that, we're like, no, we're not those kind of people. We're not the kind of people that, someone's going to tie you up and say, give me the money right now. Okay. So anyway, the end of the story is they found the car in Bnei Brak. They found the guy who was driving, and they pulled up next to him. But he was blasting music, having a good time driving my car. And they literally just pulled up, said, get out of the car, and took the car. And anyway, we got the car back last night. A really insane story. Anyway, this is on my mind, so I figured it must be somehow connected to the daf. So these people, let's go back to our story. These people, if let's say you pass the loan on to someone who's like a loan shark type, and they're going to basically say, I want the money this very minute, and I'm going to tie you up if you don't give me the money. Well, that's not really a benefit to me to be in the possession of these guys. Hachinami delo kanu. So you're going to say, okay, well, in that case, since you're not gaining any benefit from the fact that the loan was given over to these crazy guys, so are you going to say then it's not kona in that case? And the chite machinami, if you're going to say, yeah, let's distinguish between the cases, there's no, then you're going to end up with different rules for different people. That's not going to work. You can't do that kind of thing. You can't have a law that it depends on who the loan was passed to. So they basically reject that option. Ela Amar Mar Zutra. So Mar Zutra says, we basically tried. Let's go back. We're trying to understand how Rav said, Manali biyad chatneu lo ploni, because you did this b'mad shlosham, it works with 3 people standing there. It works when it's a loan, which remember, the money is lahotza'anitz. Now, there's no specific money being discussed. So we tried Amemar, we rejected. We tried Rav Ashi, rejected. So in the end, what do they say? El Amar Mar Zutra. Mar Zutra explains, this is one of 3 things. Interesting, there's only 3. Or maybe you'll say, interesting, there are 3 at all. Then it's a halacha without a reason. Okay, now, it doesn't really mean it's a halacha without a reason. There's obviously a reason for this halacha. But one of the best explanations I saw was to say, it's a halacha that doesn't fit into the usual halachic criteria. Like there's rules, how things work. And this doesn't really make sense according to our rule book of what we know to be the case. Because again, if you say milva lahotza'anitna, that it's meant to be spent, the money, and there's no real money that we're talking about. It's not like there's a stack of bills here that we're referring to. There's no way that third party could really acquire it. But the rabbis basically determined that if you do this, b'mamad shloshtan, it works. Okay, so basically it works. The way I would say it is it works through a different halachic mechanism than we usually use. Okay, it doesn't fit in with the usual halachic mechanisms, but there's obviously, and in fact, you'll see the commentaries try to give reasons for all these things. There are reasons behind it that make sense. It's not like it doesn't make sense at all. It's just harder to figure out exactly by what mechanism it works. So now we're going to see what these 3 things are, because intriguing. Chada. So one is our case. Idaf to Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel hakotev kol nechasav liishto lo asa ela pitropia. So Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, someone who is on their deathbed and says, I want to give all my possessions to my wife, basically wiping out his kids from his will. Lo asa ela pitropia. We don't allow him to do this, okay? Now, what do we learn? Again, this goes against a halachic principle. Divrei shchiv meira kechtuvim b'chisurim dami. Right? The words of a shchiv meira are as if it's a done deal. So why can't you give all the property to his wife? Well, the assumption is that we're not going to leave his kids with nothing. So therefore, we're going to basically assume that what he meant was to make his wife in charge of his money, but not that she gets all of his money. She's just in charge of how to distribute, making sure the kids get the money that they deserve, but she doesn't get to keep all the money. V'idach, and the third one, to Amar Rav Chananya, Hamasi isha lebeno gadol bebayit kneo. This is a little more strange one for us to understand, but it's based on customs in those days. If you give a house to your son for his wedding, a big house, it's a house to your beno gadol, to your oldest son, and he gets married in that house, he acquires that house. Now, all the commentaries add all sorts of criteria. This doesn't mean your house that you live in. It would have to be a house where you already took all your stuff out. Okay, it would be a house that you're not actually living in. It would be your oldest son only, which it says here. It would have to be his first marriage. It would have to be he's marrying a virgin. Okay, all sorts of criteria. But this kind of is reflective probably of the custom of the day. The assumption is that most people who marry off their son in a house, they would also build a house for the wedding, and it was usually meant to give the son the house. Okay, so again, a little harder for us to understand in our day and age, but yes. So now we're going to see some stories that reflect this concept of Rav. So the first one actually has to do with Rav. Rav says to Rav Acha bar Dila. So let's just review again. Rav says if you say it with three people, what I owe you goes to someone, instead of giving it to what you owe me, instead of giving it to me, give it to someone else. And you say it with all three. It's like there's a kinyan, which means you can't change your mind about it, right? That's the whole thing. Once kana, it's his. So Rav Acha bar Dila says to, Rav says to Rav Acha bar Dila, Hava demorika idli gabach, I gave you a kav of saffron to watch for me. Yahve leplone, give it to someone else. Instead of returning it to me, return it to someone else. And I'm saying this in front of you and in front of that person so that I won't change my mind about this. Okay, meaning, right? Let's say Rav says, I want the saffron back myself. He can't. Now it sounds like because he made this declaration, right? Now we never heard about having to make a declaration. So now we said, as long as all three people are there, and he said, give it to so-and-so, it's done. But now he says, I'm doing it in front of him so that I won't change my mind. So Michlal, it sounds like, that if he wanted to change his mind, he could have, only because he said this, he couldn't have. But, which goes against Rav, because Rav had said, as soon as you do it in front of three, even without saying, I'm doing this in front of three so that I don't change my mind, it would still work. So they say, what he really meant to say is, since I did this in front of the three of us, I cannot go back on what I said. Not because I'm saying this now, I can't go back on what I said, but remember, he said two things, because I said the first thing, which is give this to so-and-so, it's already a done deal. But not because he said, I'm doing this in front of him so that, right? So now they say, but now we have another question, which is, but wait, didn't Rav say this a different time? In other words, this is the exact same thing that Rav said elsewhere. Why does Rav have to explicitly say this in this case? Wouldn't it be obvious from what he said elsewhere? So why do we need it to be said in both cases? Okay, now it's a little strange because one is a situation and one is where he ruled, right? As a general rule, he was teaching a ruling, and here it came up in a story. But the question is kind of like, also why is the Gemara bringing up these two cases to teach us? So now they say, right, because to Amarav Chadzim, he already said this, to Amarav Hunamarav, which we already know, we've seen this a bunch of times. If you say what you owe me, give to someone else, and you say it in front of all three, it's acquired, meaning you can't change your mind. So if we just had the first one, the one we've learned already, maybe this only works with a large gift. Maybe with such a small gift, you can't change your mind, because even if the person isn't there, because it's not significant enough to be able to allow you to start changing your mind. So, kamash malan, no. If it wasn't done in front of three, you actually could change your mind even about something small like a kav of saffron. Now we're going to have a story, another story that highlights. So this was one story that highlighted. Then we asked, isn't this redundant? Why does Rav say it again? And we explained the difference between a large gift and a small gift. Now we get to something else. Hanu, another along the same issue, but a story. Hanu ginai there were gardeners that did work together, and then they kind of had to divvy up, so this one got paid, this one got paid, this one got paid, but they had to make sure that they got paid evenly. And it turns out, one had 5 extra coins by him that he had to return to the rest of the people. So they said to him, they said to him, right, give it to us in front of all these people. Right. Say that, one second. I just want to check one thing here. Okay, 1 second. I'll find one detail of this story. Right. So they say, give the money that's in your possession to, that's weird. Why is it the Bala Karka? It sounds like they owed some money to some, it was like some tax or something. But anyway, right. So the money that's for us, give to the landlord. Okay. That's what they're basically saying. And kanamine, and do a kinyan to show that you're giving it to him. So here's more than what Rav has been saying, which is do what we call a kinyan chalipin, like a handkerchief. Pick up a handkerchief to show that you're transferring him the money. Okay. So now they did this in front of, right? They said in front of the landlord that the money is going to go to him, and they did this kinyan. Okay. So l'sof azal avakush b'na ben dilei l'namshe. In the end, he went back and recalculated. And what did he discover? Lo pashka beva lo midi. It turns out he didn't actually have any extra money. They made a mistake, right? Nowadays, you'd say there was a mistake in the Excel formula, right? In those days, it wasn't an Excel formula, but they made a mistake in the calculation, and it turned out he had no extra money. So now, Ata the Kameter Rav Nachman. So now the landlord comes in front of Rav Nachman and wants his money. Amarle, ma'yavilach. He says, what can I do for you? Chada da amar. Oh, sorry. And the landlord wanted his money, and this gardener said, but I don't owe the money. This money, right, is not mine to owe. So Rav Nachman says to him, ma'yavilach, what can I do for you? I can't help you. Chada, number one, da amar Rav Huna. Number one, we have this mamad shloshtan, and this money was committed to him. Ve'od hakanu minach. And not only that, you did a kinyan. So number one, you have mamad shloshtan, which means he already acquired it. Number two, you did a kinyan. So there's no way that you can get out of this, basically. So what does he say? Amarle Rava le Rav Nachman. So Rava now comes to defend this ganan, this gardener, and he says, Achu hai mika amar lo yahivna. This guy isn't saying I don't want to give the money. Dileka gabai kamar. What he's saying is this money isn't in my possession. I don't have these 5 extra coins that people talked about. It was a mistake. To which Rav Nachman says, oh, why didn't you tell me that in the first place? Basically, what happened was they didn't actually tell him the whole story, and he didn't understand all the details. There's always a problem when you go in front of someone and you don't give them the whole story. When he realized the whole thing was a mistake, he says, oh, well, then it's a kinyan by mistake. Kinyan by mistake can be erased. Okay, so in the end, he doesn't have to give this money because it was all an error. But if it hadn't been an error, he would have had to give the money. Okay, there's just an interesting point in Tosfot, which is he quotes Rabbeinu Hananel and Rabbeinu Tam, who say basically this is only because all the other Gananim that were with him agreed with him. In other words, it wasn't like he thought the calculation was this and they thought the calculation was that, and they had a whole deliberation about it. In that case, it would be a different story. And then it's very interesting. What comes out of this commentary of the Rabbeinu Hananel and Rabbeinu Tam is that if you admit something, even if you later think it's a mistake, it's done. You admitted it, and there's nothing to do about it. Like an admission, confession is accepted. Okay, even if you claim it's a mistake, unless it's proven or everyone else agrees with you, whoever else is involved in the issue, that it was a mistake. Okay, which is also raises a question about this story, which is who brought him to court then? If everyone agreed with him, why would they bring him to court to insist that he pay the money? There's something that doesn't jive 100% in this story. Okay, moving on. Itmar. Now we get to a whole other thing, which is a very interesting topic, which is someone says, Holech maneh leploni shani chayav lo. Okay, we're going to have 2 issues here. I say, I owe money to you, and I send it with a messenger. Now, if I say the word holech, okay, what do I mean? Give this to so-and-so. So, is it already considered like yours as soon as I gave it to the shaliach, or is it still mine? And for what issue? There's two things going on here. One is, who's responsible if something happens? Okay, let's go back to my car example. Let's say I was carrying money. I was a messenger for someone. It was in my car got stolen. So who's responsible for that? Is it my fault and I now have to pay the money that I was just being a messenger to deliver? Or do I go back to the original person and say, listen, my car was stolen, the money's gone, and would you like give me money now to return to that guy? So according to both Rav and Shmuel, we're going to see chayav ba'acharayut. In terms of responsibility, the messenger does not take responsibility. If that car was stolen with the money in the car, okay, unless the person was negligent and left the car unlocked or something, but the car was not, right? It's not his responsibility. It's really the responsibility of the person who sent. They don't relinquish responsibility. However, the question is, and these you would think would go together, but they don't necessarily, is the person, let's say, I say, listen, I owe $100 to you. I say to a messenger, please take it to them. And then I say, wait, I changed my mind. Can I change my mind? Or as soon as I say the word holech, give it to, I've already, now this goes back to our Mishnah, zachin la'adam shelo b'fanav, right? You already acquired it by me giving it to someone else. So at that point, you've acquired it, in which case it's yours and I can't change my mind about it. Now you would say, well, if it's yours, then you should assume responsibility for it, not me. But that's a chov, because that would mean if I make you responsible, I'm returning you money, and I sent it to a messenger, and you're already take responsibility because I've already been zochet, right? I've made you the owner of it. And I've made you the owner also for the issues of responsibility. That's already a chov. That's bad for you because if something happens to it and the car which she's driving gets stolen along the way, you never get your money back. So that I can't, right? So there's a question here. Do those things go hand in hand or not? So let's see. So again, I say, give this, right? Go return this money. Now, what does it mean I changed my mind? I owe the money, but I could say, I don't want to give the money today. I need the money, right? All of a sudden I need cash for something. And give me the money back. I'll give you another day. So can I do that? So I'm a Rav, chayav b'acharayut. I'm responsible for the money still, okay, till it gets to you. But if I want to change my mind, I can't. Even though, right, well, this actually, right, I'm responsible for the money, but it's already like it's yours. So I can't change my mind about it. Ushmuel Amar, this is what he means. He connects these two. If I'm still responsible for the money, well, then that means it's still in my domain. So that means I could change my mind if I want. So right now, the Gemara wants to say that this is all based on, and that's going to be our topic for really the rest of today, this concept. Is there a machloket tanaim about this topic or a moraim? First, it's a moraim. Is this the machloket Rav and Shmuel? We're going to see in a minute. I haven't told you what it is, but we're going to keep going back to this concept. Why don't we suggest this as the machlok? Umar savar holech kizachidami. Umar savar la holech lav kizachidami. The whole question is when I say holech, go take this to so-and-so, do I mean that you're already zechei and acquire it on their behalf? In which case, that's Rav, right? You say holech kizachidami, I can't change my mind about it. Or do we say like Shmuel, holech lav kizachidami? It doesn't work. Take this to someone doesn't mean acquire it on their behalf. It just means you're in place of me. And if I were taking it, it would be mine until I got to the person's house. So you're just a messenger of mine. And that's Shmuel. So that's what they assume at first. To which they say, lo. Everybody thinks, according to this logic anyway, right now, this suggestion, that if I say holech, you've acquired it already. So I'm returning you this money. I give it to some person messenger. I say, give this to you. As soon as they get it, it's yours, which means I can't change my mind about it. I'm still responsible. So now, well, why is there a machlok at Rav and Shmuel then? Rav says, I can't change my mind. That makes perfect sense. Shmuel, we're going to have to figure out why does Shmuel say that. So Mar savar lo amrin amigo. Rav says we don't say because you're responsible, it's still in your domain and you have the rights to change your mind. But Mar savar, Shmuel says amrin amigo. Amigo means mitoch. From the fact that I'm still responsible, that gives me the rights also to change my mind about it. Okay? So now we're going to have Tanya Kavatei the Rav. We're going to prove a Braita like Rav, and then we're going to bring a whole bunch of stories where we see they held like Rav, which is really, I can't change my mind about, but I am responsible. Holech maneh leploni shani chayav lo. Okay, that's our case. Or tein maneh leploni shani chayav lo. Whether you use the word holech, go bring this, or tein, give it. It's the same thing. Or holech maneh leploni pikadon sheyesh li biyadi, or return them some item I've been watching for them. Or tein maneh leploni pikadon sheyesh li biyadi, or give it to Ploni, this 100 things that I have in it, right? And he gave me $100 to watch, give that 100 or 100 zuzim, give that 100 zuzim to him. Chayav ba'achrayuto. Okay, so number one, this is, everybody holds this, Rav and Shmuel, and here you see it in the Braita. I'm responsible for the money. If something happens along the way, I have to replace it. Here you see Rav. If I want to change my mind, though, I can't change my mind. It's already as if it's in your hands. So then I say, wait a minute, pikadon, why is it pikadon? If you give me something to watch, now there's a concept that if you give me something to watch, you're giving it to me particularly. You didn't choose someone else. You chose me because you trusted me. And that means that I can't give it to anybody else. Let's say I'm going on vacation. I don't want to watch it. Unless you give me permission, I can't give it to somebody else to watch because there's a concept, ein ritzono sheyeh pikdono biyad achil. I don't want, or any person doesn't want, their item to be watched by anyone else unless they trust them. So that means if I give your pikadon to a shaliach, to a messenger, that's not, now I, who's the messenger, the person who's returning it, who basically we said in this Braita, I can't change my mind about it because it's zachi, which means it's good for you. So it's as if you got it already. I could say it's not actually good for you. Why is it not good for you? Because I could say, but you don't want your pikadon to be in anyone else's hands. So it's actually worse for you if I give it to a messenger. If it's worse for you, then it's not yours until, right, you get it. So I should, theoretically, it's a little bit convoluted, but because I did something that's not good for you, I should actually be able to change my mind about it. So Amar Rabbi Zera, it must be talking about in this Braita, it must be a case where presumably after you gave me your pikadon to watch and you thought you trusted me, turns out I was negligent with some other people's items. And then I got a bad reputation and all you wanted to do was to get it out of my hands. So when I give it to a messenger, you're actually thrilled about it. And that's why it would be a zchut, and that's why I would no longer be able to change my mind. That was a side question. Now we're going to get to some stories. Rav Sheshet, he sold all these sarbalim, these cloaks, and sold them on credit. So all these people in Mechoza owed him money. Now he wasn't in Mechoza. So Amalei, the Rav Yosef Bar Chama, you heard Rav Yosef Bar Chama was traveling to Mechoza. He says, listen, when you get there, just can you collect all my money that people owe me and bring it back to me? So he says, so Azal, so he goes there, Yavina Lehu, they give him the money, and then Amrele, they say to him, Niknemina, can you acquire these for us? In other words, we don't want responsibility anymore. So acquire it, then it'll be your responsibility. If something happens to you on the way, we won't be responsible. Amrelehu in, he said, no problem, I can do that. Okay, now, L'self ishtabit lehu, but in the end, he never did the kinyan. Okay, he told them, he a little bit tricked them. He said, oh, sure, I'll do a kinyan. I'll assume responsibility. But then he never did. So ki'ata l'kabe, when he got there, Amar le, when he got to Rav Sheshet and he brought him the stuff, he said what he did, that they asked him to do a kinyan and he wasn't willing. And Rav Sheshet said to him, Shap your avadet lo shapit nafshe eved lova liishmalva. First, let's explain what eved lova liishmalva is. It's actually a pasuk, which means that when you borrow money from someone, you're subjugated to them, basically. You're like enslaving yourself to them because your hand will always be on the bottom, right? If you lent me money, I'm always indebted to you. So therefore, if there's any sort of agreement, it'll always go on your side and not mine because you've done me a favor, basically. So this doesn't exactly work with the case, but what he says is, it's good that you didn't put yourself in the situation where you were subjugated to them. And that if something happened, you'd be responsible because you're not responsible. That's what Rav said, right? The truth of Shmuel said it also. You're not responsible. So therefore, it's good you didn't take on responsibility. Lishana Achrina, different language, which makes a lot more sense, is that what Rav Sheshet said to him was, Shapir avadik, good what you did, because Eved Lova Ishmalve. These people borrow money, basically. It's not a loan, but it's like a loan. They didn't pay the money up front. They gave him the money later. That's like a loan. So they're subjugated to me. So it's their responsibility until I get the money. They're responsible and not you. So good you didn't make yourself responsible. Another story. Rav Achai Rabbi Yoshia, Havale Ispeka de Kaspa ben Harde. He had some sort of vessel made of silver, and it was in Nehardea, moving out of Amabet. Amalei Rabbi Dostai Rabbi Yanai. Okay, I told you we're going to talk a lot about thugs today and bullies, and here's the story. So he says to Rabbi Dostai Rabbi Yanai and the Rabbi Yossi Bar Kippur, these two rabbis were going there, same kind of story. Listen, bring it back to me when you go to this town. Bring back my, someone's watching it for me. Bring it back. Azul, so they go, Yahavin Yale, and they give it to him. Okay, they give him the silver vessel. Amre lehu, and then they say to them, Nikne minaychu, said, can you acquire it from us so that you assume responsibility? Now, as opposed to the last story where we said yes and then ignored them. In this case, Amru lehu, lo. They said, no, we're not assuming responsibility for you. Now, people who gave them the vessel now said, well, if you're not assuming responsibility, we don't trust you. We don't want to give this to you because if you lose it, we're stuck. So Amr lehu, so they said back to them, Ahadreni alan, so give it back to us. Well, what did Rav say? As soon as you give it, you can't take it back, right? So Rabbi Dostai Rabbi Yanai Amar lehu, in Rabbi Dostai Rabbi Yanai says, okay, we'll give it back to you. Rabbi Yossi Bar Kippur Amar lehu, lo. So now we have a split among the two rabbis, and this is where it gets interesting. One says, sure, we'll give it back to you. And the other one says, what do you mean? I'm not giving it back to these guys. I'm taking it. They gave it to us. It can't be choser, bro. This, Rabbi Achi wanted it back. I'm going to bring it back to him. Habu kamitzarele. Now they started beating him up. Amrule. And then, okay, so now Rabbi Yossi says, Bar Kippur says to Rabbi Dostai, Chaze mar hechi ka'avid, do you see what they're doing to me? Amar lehu tav ramule. So now, one second, let me just get that I confusing who says who did what. 1 second. Amrule. Sorry, I just want to check one thing. Sorry. It's the opposite. Amrule is that the people, the thugs, said to Rabbi Dostai, do you see what this guy's doing to us? He's not giving it back because you agreed to give it back. To which Rabbi Dostai, it was kind of like they're saying, are you on his side or on our side? So Amar Lehu, he says to them, Tav Ramule, go beat him up more. Okay? Kind of he joined the other side and started saying, oh yeah, beat him up more, beat him up more. I'm with you guys. Okay, you can imagine the scene. Ki'atu legabe, it's interesting. They don't actually tell you whether he managed to keep the vessel and return it. It sounds like he did actually, but it's not so clear. Anyway, when they get back to Rabbi Achai and they tell him the story, Amrle, so Rabbi Yossi Bar Kippur starts to complain about Rabbi Dostai. And he says, Chazimar, look, Rabbi Achi, lo mistaya de lo sian, not only did he not help me while these guys were beating me up, ela amar lehu nami tav ramule, but he kept egging them on to hit me more. Amar le, so Rabbi Achai looks at him and says, Amai tavid hachi, why on earth did you do that? Amar le, otam b'nei adam. Hein ama, they were a cubit. Kova'an ama, their hats were a cubit. Midabrim echetzihem, they were talking in these deep voices, talking from their stomachs. Shmotehem avolim, they have the scariest names. Arda va'arta ufile beresh, whatever that means. Some people say they're animal names. Okay. Omrim kafotu koftim, they say tie him up, they'll tie him up. Omrim harogu horgim, they say kill this person, they'll kill him. Ilu harad tetostai, if they were to kill me, mi natam yanai abba bar kmoti, who would give Yanai my father a son like me? In other words, I feared for my life. Amalei. So he wasn't exactly convinced, maybe because Rabbi Yossi Bar Kippur stood up to them. So he says, B'nei adam alalu krovim lemalchutein, are they connected with the authorities? Amalei hein, he said yes. Yesh lam susim upradim sheratzim achreihem, do they have mules and horses that are running after them, running with them? Amalei hein, yes. Says these really are tough guys. Amalei ihachi shapir avadu. If so, then it is, I guess, okay what you did. Okay, so in the end, he's vindicated, right? He's okay what he did because he really feared for his life. This raises all sorts of questions, right? What are the boundaries of, if you think your life is in danger first of all, what is considered thinking your life is a danger that enables you to do other things, and then what is allowed to be done, right? Can in theory, he endangered Rabbi Yosef Bar Kiva's life by not defending him. Anyway, why Rabbi Yosef Bar Kiva thought he needed to raises all sorts of questions, but not for today. Now we're moving on. Holech maneh leploni. We're still talking about messengers, but now I send you as a messenger to deliver something to somebody else. Okay, this time it's a gift. I'm going to give a gift to someone. Halachu biksho, you went to find the person I wanted to give the gift to, but you couldn't find them because they had presumably died. So what do you do with it now? Does it go back to me, or does it go to the inheritors of the person I sent the gift to? Tanechad, one braita says, it goes back to the original sender. I get my back because I wanted to give a gift to so-and-so. So-and-so's dead, so I get my money back. Tanya idach liyorshei shenishtalfi. It goes to the inheritors of the person I sent it to. Now, again, the Gemara is going to try to connect this. I said we're going to keep going at this today. We tried to say the machloka Rav and Shmuel was holech kezachi dami or not. In the end, we said that's not. But we're going to try it again and say maybe this machloka between two braitas is a tannaitic debate about whether holech kezachi dami, because lema b'haka biflage mar savar holech kezachi dami. If we say I send you as a messenger, you already acquired it on behalf of the person. Even if they're dead, it goes to their estate. And Mar Savar, the one who says it goes back to me, says holech lav kezachi dami. You didn't acquire it on their behalf. So therefore, since, right, by me saying holech, if I said zeche for someone, I give you a gift and I say, acquire this on behalf of someone else, of course you acquire it, because zachin adam shelo b'fanav, that's the whole thing. But if I say holech, do I mean zechi or not? Is holech, bring it to them, and when you get there, they'll acquire it? Or did I mean that you're going to acquire it for them right away? So if I didn't mean, if holech is not considered kizachi, then it goes back to me. In other words, again, it would have gone to him were he alive, but he's not alive. I'm a Rabbi Abba Bar Mama. So now we're going to have other explanations of this. So the first explanation was to say, this is the tannaitic debate. Is holech kizachi or is it not? But then they're going to say no. Rabbi Abba Bar Mama says, Dekule alma holech lav kizachi. No, maybe everybody holds that it doesn't work normally. But what's the question here? Lo kashya habebari habeshchiv meira. Maybe the difference between the two braitot is, was I on my deathbed when I said it? In which case, holech is kizachi dami, because anything I say is as if it's a done deal. And that's why it goes to their heirs. Or was I a healthy person? In which case, we're going to say holech lav kizachi dami. Rav Zvi gives a different explanation. Hava habeshchiv meira. Both are talking about a person about to die. But the question is, how to eat? Now, what happened? When the messenger got there, the person was dead. When did the person die? Before I made my statement and sent the messenger, or after? Okay? If the person was still alive, no, I didn't know. I thought the person was alive, but I said, right? And then actually the person was alive. If the person was alive when I said give it to them, and then I die, or I was about to die, so we're going to do what I said, and it's going to go to their heirs. But if I say give it to so-and-so, and it turns out they weren't even alive at the time, then my statement was a meaningless statement, and it doesn't go, and it goes back to me, or if I'm dead already, then my heirs. Rav Papa explains it. We have 4 explanations here. This is the 4th. Haba habebari. Both are when the person was perfectly healthy. And what's the difference? Now, normally it would have worked then, because holech lav kezachi dami, we're going to say. But what? Now, if the person died before I did, let's say I was healthy when I said it, and then they died first, and then I died. So it's going to go back to me because they died first, and holech lav kezachi dami. But if I died first, after I said bring this to that person, there's something called mitzvah l'kayim divrei hamet. We want to do what a dead person wants. We want to fulfill their last wishes. So in that case, we're going to give it to them. The problem is they died in the interim, but already at that point, we're supposed to give it to them. So therefore it goes to their heirs. So we saw 4 different ways of understanding this. Okay, you can use today's study guide to kind of go over this is charted out. Now they're going to try again. And this is the most complicated part. Unfortunately, we're getting to the end of the daf. It's always harder, the concentration level at the end of daf, but try to bear with me and we'll review it again tomorrow. Lema holech kizachi tannaitic. Again, we're going to try to suggest, they keep trying to say, that there's a basic machloket, holech kizachi, holech lav kizachi, first Rav and Shmuel, then this braita, now another braita. Ditanya. Okay, we're going to have a lot of opinions only after we can explain them all, one by one. Gittin. Same exact case we just had. I want to send a gift, and then the person's dead by the time you find them. According to Tanakama, it goes back to me. But what if I died also? Rabbanit and Rabbi Yaakov amru yachzeru li yorshe mishalech. It goes to my heirs. Okay, that's kind of going with Tanakama and saying not only does it go to me, but if I'm dead, it goes to my heirs. Yesh omrim, but some people say no. If I died, li yorshe mishenishtalchu lo, it goes to the other person's heirs. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Omer Mishum Rabbi Yaakov Shamar Mishum Rabbi Meir. He said the name of Rabbi Yaakov. He said the name of Rabbi Meir. Mitzvah l'kayim divrei hamet. This sounds like the previous. We're going to have to see what the difference is later, but because the mitzvah to do what I said, even though I eventually died, since, therefore it should go to their heirs, because I wanted it to go to him. He's not alive anymore. Let it go to his heirs. The rabbis say, we don't know. We don't know, is holech kizachidam? Okay, we're going to see. We don't know. Well, we'll get to what we don't know. We don't know what to do, so we split it 50-50. Okay, this is classic Dina Mamonot, that we don't know what to do. We split it 50-50. Vikanamru in Babylonia, they said, there's a fascinating answer. Shaliach does whatever he wants, meaning the shaliach gets to decide who to give it to. Fascinating answer. We'll get back to this. And last thing before we start explaining all the opinions, Amar Rabbi Shimon Anasi, Al Yadi Hayama Aseh, wants to bring a case to prove there was a case that happened. He wants to prove, like Rabbi Natan and Rabbi Yaakov, that it goes back to the heirs of the person who sent the gift. So, my laba kamifugeh. Let's start going through all the opinions. And again, you can use the chart to kind of see it all visually. Did Tanakama Sabah, Holech Lav Kazachidami. Tanakama, who said that it goes back to the original person, right? Even if I didn't die, it goes back to me. Holech Lav Kazachidami. He basically says the fact that I say give it means they weren't zocheh. Okay, and here you see Holech Lav Kazachidami. Rabbi Natan and Rabbi Yaakov, Nami, Holech Lav Kazachi. They say the same thing. It's just that they add this other thing, which is Af Agav Demit, even though I died, Lo Amrina Mitzvah L'Kayim Divrei Hamet. In other words, if I died, it goes to my heirs because Holech is not Kazachi, and we don't hold this thing about it's a mitzvah to do whatever the dead person wanted. So we don't try to fulfill my words. The Yesh Omrim, who said it goes to the heirs of the person I sent it to, obviously says holech kizachi. So this is all the suggestion. We have some people who said holech lav kizachi, some people who said holech kizachi, and that would explain what we want to explain, which is a machloket tanaim, is holech kizachi dami or not. We still haven't explained all the opinions, so we're going to keep going, although this whole thing is going to be rejected. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Omer Mishum Rabbi Yaakov Tamar Mishum Rabbi Meir. Again, what did he say? He said mitzvah l'kayim divrei hamet, which means, right, he thinks holech lav kizachi. The heirs of the other guy don't acquire it because of holech kizachi. They acquire it because of a different reason. Because mitzvah l'kayim divrei hamet, because I wanted to give this gift to this person. So what, that the person's dead? Now that I died, we have to make sure that my last wishes are fulfilled, and we give it to their heirs. Mi uhecha demit, right, because he died, amrina mitzvah l'kayim divrei hamet, as I just explained. Chachamim olim yachloku misapkalu, because they don't know. They don't know, number one, is holech kizachi dami, and they don't know is a mitzvah l'kayim divrei hamet. So because of that, they say 50-50. V'kan amru, and in Babel they said shuda dedayin. What's shuda dedayin? Shuda adif. Shuda, sorry, I said shuda dedayin. That's where it usually comes up. Shuda adif is let the shaliach evaluate what the story is. Now there's a big machloket Rashi and Rabbanit time, and you can listen to Gethet this week of Rabbanit El Shimoni. It'll be up in a little while, hopefully today. And there she discusses what on earth is this shuda. Okay, why does the shaliach get to decide? Who's the shaliach to get to decide? So there's a machloket Rashi and Rabbanit time about whether the shaliach decides because, and often this is used as it's usually the judges get to decide in a case where they're not sure. So leave it to the discretion of the judges. The assumption is that the judges know how to get to the truth. And therefore, we're going to leave it to them. And here you'd have to say the shaliach somehow knows the truth. Now, why would the shaliach know the truth? The only thing I can think of is that the shaliach was there when he gave the gift, so he was able to read what he wanted, okay, and figure out, this was the closest person to be able to figure out what the truth is. Rabbanit Tam's approach is more, we just have to have harmony. We need to have some sort of resolution. We don't have a truth, so we're going to come up with what seems the most right, and we're going to give it to the discretion of, in this case, the messenger to decide Anyway, there's a very interesting debate, and you can listen to Gefet. It will be more elaborated. Rabbi Shimon HaNasi Maaseh Atil Ashmuna, and he just wanted to bring a case to prove who we hold. Okay, so that's the first understanding, which was trying to get to Holech Kezachi or Lav Kezachi Dam. Okay, so quick review of today's talk. We started with trying to understand why Rav says in Milveh, right? B'mamad Shlosh Tam works, even though it doesn't really make any sense. In the end, we say it really doesn't make any sense. But we do it anyway, right? Rav said it anyway. We had some stories to prove Rav. Then we got into this whole thing about, can you change your mind if you say Holech? Is it Kezachi Dami? Is it not Kezachi Dami? We saw Machlok at Rav and Shmuel about it. Even though everyone says you're responsible, still it could be it's already in the ownership of the other person, which had all sorts of ramifications. We saw some stories about it, about taking responsibility. Does the messenger need to? Really not. And then we saw this whole thing about if, right, is it a machloket tanaim about whether holech kezachi dami or not? And every time we tried to say it's a machloket tanaim, we claimed at the end, no, it really was something else. And I'm going to stop here because we'll really start with tomorrow with, no, that's really not the machloket. And the machloket between all these different opinions really is based on some other machloket. And we'll start there with tomorrow's stuff. Wishing everybody a great day.